The silk dress whispered against her skin as Zara Park balanced the tray of expensive whiskey. Her fingers remained steady, despite the rage simmering beneath her calm exterior, carrying glasses worth more than most people's monthly rent. But that wasn't what made tonight dangerous. What made tonight dangerous was the man in the corner booth, the one whose eyes tracked her like she was prey, the one whose reputation for cruelty preceded him like a shadow. Jin, the Viper, Wang. He had no idea who she was, and that was his first mistake. Before we dive into this story of power, betrayal, and unexpected love, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss how a Mafia princess makes a ruthless crime lord fall to his knees. Trust me, this gets intense. The Dragon's Pearl restaurant existed in the shadows of Seoul's glittering skyline. To the wealthy elite who dined on the upper floors, it was a culinary experience. To those who descended the marble stairs to the private dining rooms below, it was something else entirely. A sanctuary, a battleground, a place where Korea's most dangerous men broke bread before breaking bones. Zara had been working the underground level for 3 weeks now, playing the role of Mina, just another pretty face serving drinks to monsters. Her real name would have sent every man in this room to their knees. But tonight, she was invisible. Exactly how she needed to be. Her father, Kwon Park, hadn't built his empire by trusting blindly. Someone in his organization was feeding information to their enemies. 3 shipments intercepted, 2 safe houses compromised, 5 men dead, and the mole was somewhere in this room. Table 7 needs refills, Manager Choi barked, his weathered face creased with permanent disapproval. Zara smoothed her black uniform dress and picked up the tray. Table 7, the private booth in the far corner where the newest player in Seoul's underworld held court. Jin Hwang, 28 years old, Ivy League educated, ruthlessly efficient. In 3 years, he'd transformed his family's struggling loan shark operation into a sophisticated criminal enterprise. The Viper, they called him, beautiful and deadly. She'd studied his file until she could recite it in her sleep, but files didn't capture the physical presence of the man. As she approached his booth, she understood why people feared him. He sat with the lazy confidence of a predator, his tailored suit molded perfectly to his frame. Sharp jawline, dark eyes that missed nothing, and lips that curved with casual cruelty. 3 of his men flanked the table, but Jin commanded the space like a king on a throne. "Gentlemen," Zara said, her voice pitched soft and subservient. "More whiskey?" Jin's eyes slid over her with the mechanical assessment of someone evaluating merchandise. No recognition, no respect, just appraisal. "Leave the bottle," one of his lieutenants said, waving dismissively. Zara bent to place the bottle on the table. Professional, efficient. That's when Jin's hand shot out and grabbed her wrist. "Wait," he said, his voice smooth as silk over steel. His fingers circled her wrist like a shackle, thumb pressing against her pulse point. "What's your name?" Every instinct screamed at Zara to break his fingers, to show him exactly what happened to men who touched her without permission. But she was Mina tonight, powerless, vulnerable, so she lowered her eyes. "Mina, sir?" Mina. He drew out her fake name like he was tasting it. His grip tightened, pulling her closer. She could smell his expensive cologne, see the predatory gleam in his eyes. "You're new here." "Yes, sir, 3 weeks." His free hand reached up, fingers grazing her cheek in a touch that made her skin crawl. "Pretty thing? African father? Korean mother?" Zara's jaw clenched. He saw her mixed heritage and immediately felt entitled to comment, to touch, to claim space in her personal history. "My family isn't your business," she said quietly, the words escaping before she could stop them. His men went silent. Jin's expression shifted from lazy interest to something sharper, more dangerous. "Everything in this restaurant is my business," he said softly. His hand moved from her cheek to her throat, not squeezing, just resting there, a promise and a threat. "You do well to remember that, Mina." His thumb traced her jawline in a gesture that was unmistakably possessive, degrading. His men chuckled, the sound making Zara's blood boil beneath her carefully controlled exterior. "Now," Jin continued, his hand finally releasing her, "pour our drinks and show some gratitude for the attention. Girls like you should appreciate when men like me notice them." She wanted to break his nose, shatter his kneecaps, show him exactly what this girl was capable of. Instead, she picked up the bottle with steady hands and poured their drinks, each glass filled with amber liquid while she cataloged every detail: the scar on his lieutenant's knuckles, the nervous tick of the accountant to his left. The way Jin watched her with eyes that promised he considered this interaction far from over. "Thank you for your service, Mina," Jin said when she finished, his tone mocking the courtesy of the words. He pulled out a few bills and tucked them into the front of her dress, his fingers lingering inappropriately. "Buy yourself something nice. A girl with your assets should show them off properly." His men laughed again, the sound following her as she turned and walked away. Every step away from that table, she felt his eyes on her, claiming, consuming, dismissing. Behind the bar, Zara set down the tray with controlled precision. Her hands didn't shake. Her expression remained neutral, but in her mind, she was already planning his punishment. The summit happened 3 nights later at the Lotus Garden Estate, Quan Park's fortress masquerading as a luxury compound in the hills overlooking Seoul. Zara spent those 3 days being Mina, serving drinks, enduring wandering hands and crude comments, gathering intelligence. Jin came back twice more. Each time he singled her out. Each time he pushed boundaries further, his touches lingering longer, his comments more degrading. He had no idea he was testing a cobra. Tonight, she shed Mina like a snake sheds skin. The bathroom mirror reflected someone completely different. Her natural hair, which she'd kept in a conservative bun as Mina, now fell in elegant braids adorned with gold cuffs. Her makeup was dramatic, gold eyeshadow that made her brown eyes luminous, lips painted deep red. But it was the outfit that completed the transformation. A custom Givenchy suit in midnight black, tailored to perfection. The jacket cut sharp angles across her shoulders, the pants falling in clean lines. Beneath it, a crimson silk blouse that hinted at femininity without apology. She looked like what she was, power dressed in designer clothing. "You look like your mother." Her father's voice came from the doorway. Quan Park commanded respect through presence alone. At 58, he remained formidable, broad-shouldered, sharp-eyed, with silver threading through his black hair. The founder of the Park Empire, a man who'd clawed his way from the streets to the summit of Seoul's underworld. "Mom always said the best weapon is looking like you don't need one," Zara replied, fastening diamond studs to her ears. "Did you find our mole?" he asked. 3 suspects. I'll confirm tonight." She turned to face him. But something else came up. Jin Huang. Her father's expression darkened. "The Huang boy. His family's been sniffing around our territories." "What about him?" Zara told him everything. Every detail of Jin's behavior at the restaurant, the touches, the comments, the casual degradation. By the time she finished, her father's hands were clenched into fists. "I'll have him killed," he said flatly. "No one disrespects my daughter and lives." "No, Appa." Zara placed a hand on his arm. "I have a better idea. Death is too quick. I want him to understand exactly what he did, and I want to use him." Her father studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "You have your mother's strategic mind. Very well. But if he steps out of line again?" "He won't," Zara promised. "After tonight, Jin Huang will be very, very careful about who he touches." The grand hall of the Lotus Garden Estate glittered with dangerous beauty. Crystal chandeliers cast golden light over Korea's most powerful crime families, all gathered for Quan Park's annual summit. Zara descended the curved staircase with 4 elite guards flanking her, a show of force, a statement of status. Conversations quieted as people registered her presence, and then she saw him. Jin stood near the bar, drink in hand, deep in conversation with the Lee family's second son. He wore a different suit tonight, charcoal gray with subtle pinstripes, every inch the sophisticated businessman. He hadn't seen her yet. Zara crossed the room with purposeful strides, her heels clicking against marble. People parted instinctively, creating a path. Her guards followed at the perfect distance. Jin laughed at something Lee said, the sound carrying across the room. Confident, relaxed. She stopped 3 feet away and waited. Lee noticed her first. His eyes widened, and he immediately bowed. "Miss Park?" "An honor." Jin turned, his expression polite but disinterested. "Miss Park, I don't believe we've—" He stopped. Zara watched the exact moment recognition hit. His eyes widened fractionally, color draining from his face as his brain processed the impossible. The waitress? Mina. But not Mina. Hello, Mr. Huang, she said, her voice carrying clear and cold through the sudden silence. We've met before, actually, 3 times, though you weren't terribly concerned with introductions. He opened his mouth, closed it. For the first time in probably years, Jin the Viper Huang was speechless. Let me properly introduce myself, Zara continued, taking a step closer. Zara Park, daughter of Quan Park, heir to the Park Empire, and the woman you touched. She leaned in close enough that only he could hear her next words, her voice dropping to a lethal whisper. You made a grave mistake, Mr. Huang, and now you're going to pay for it. Jin's face had gone from pale to ashen. Around them, every major player in Seoul's underworld focused on this confrontation. Miss Park, he started, his voice carefully controlled despite the fear she could see in his eyes. I had no idea. That the waitress you groped was the heir to the Park Empire? Zara finished for him, her tone sharp as a blade. Yes, I gathered that from the way you shoved money into my dress. Someone behind them inhaled sharply. The insult was worse than a physical blow in this world. Jin knew it. Everyone knew it. I apologize, he said stiffly, and she could see pride warring with survival instinct across his features. My behavior was unacceptable. Unacceptable? Zara's laugh was cold. That's one word for it. Degrading, disrespectful, predatory. Which word would you prefer, Mr. Wang? His jaw clenched, a muscle jumping. All of them. There's no excuse for how I treated you. No, she agreed, letting the silence stretch, watching him squirm. There isn't. Around them, the Lee family had quietly backed away. Smart. No one wanted to be close when the Park Empire decided to strike. My father wants you dead, Zara said conversationally, as if discussing the weather. Slowly. Painfully. He's considering which method would send the clearest message to anyone else who might think about putting their hands on me. The blood drained from Jin's face completely. His hands clenched at his sides, and she could practically see him calculating odds, looking for escape routes that didn't exist. However, she continued, and saw desperate hope flicker in his eyes, I convinced him that death was too simple, too quick, too merciful. What do you want? Jin asked quietly, his voice rough. You'll work for me, Zara said, watching his reaction carefully. 6 months, as my personal enforcer and bodyguard. You'll go where I go, do what I say, and answer only to me. You'll be my weapon, my shield, and my servant. His eyes widened with genuine shock. You can't be serious. Deadly serious. She stepped closer, invading his space the way he'd invaded hers, and had the satisfaction of seeing him stiffen. You treated me like I was nothing, like I was an object for your amusement. Now you'll understand what it feels like to be powerless, to be at someone else's mercy. The Huang family will never agree, he started, desperation creeping into his voice. The Huang family, Zara interrupted coldly, will agree to anything that keeps you breathing. Or would you prefer I let my father have his way? I'm sure he'd enjoy it. He's quite creative when it comes to making examples of people. Jin's hands were trembling now, she noticed with satisfaction. Every line of his body screamed resistance, rage, humiliation. But underneath it all, she saw the calculation, the survival instinct. If I refuse? He asked, though they both knew the answer. Then you die tonight, along with your mother, your younger brother, your lieutenants, everyone you've ever cared about. She said it without inflection, a simple statement of fact. The Park Empire doesn't make threats, Mr. Huang. We make promises. And I promise you, if you refuse me, there won't be enough left of the Huang family to fill a shoebox. The color drained from his face completely. You wouldn't... My mother has nothing to do with this. Neither did I when you put your hands on me, Zara shot back, her voice like ice. But that didn't stop you, did it? So why should your family's innocence matter to me? Jin stared at her, and she could see the moment he broke. The moment he realized he had absolutely no leverage, no power, no options. He bowed, stiffly with barely controlled rage and humiliation, but he bowed. I accept your terms, he said through gritted teeth, the words forced out like broken glass. Good. Zara smiled, though there was no warmth in it whatsoever. Report to the East Wing in 1 hour. Bring nothing but yourself. Your old life ends tonight, Jin Huang. Consider yourself reborn as my property. She turned and walked away, leaving him standing there, humiliated, furious, and completely at her mercy. Exactly where he deserved to be. Jin arrived at the East Wing exactly 1 hour later, escorted by 2 of Zara's guards. He'd changed into simple black clothing, tactical pants and a fitted shirt. Zara had changed too, trading the designer suit for comfortable training gear. If Jin was going to be her enforcer, she needed to know what he was capable of. "Welcome to your new quarters," she said, gesturing to the sparse room behind her. A bed, a desk, a private bathroom, nothing more. "You'll stay here when we're at the estate. When we travel, you'll room adjacent to me. Consider yourself on call 24 hours a day." His eyes swept the space with barely concealed disgust. "Charming." "You're lucky to have walls and a door," Zara replied coolly. "My father wanted you in the actual cells underground. You know, the ones with the chains and the rats. I convinced him this was more practical. Don't make me regret that decision." Jin's gaze snapped back to her, sharp and assessing despite his situation. "Why? Why what? Why this?" He gestured between them, frustration evident in every movement. "You could have killed me. Why go through the trouble of keeping me alive as your what? Your pet? Your trophy?" Zara studied him for a moment, debating how much truth to reveal. "Because dead men can't learn lessons, Mr. Wong, and you desperately need to learn what it means to respect people regardless of their perceived status or power." "What? So this is about teaching me morality?" His lip curled with something between anger and disbelief. "How noble of you." "No," Zara corrected, her voice dropping to ice. "This is about making absolutely certain you never forget what happens when you touch what belongs to the Park family. Consider it a 6-month education in consequences. And trust me, I'm a very thorough teacher." Something flickered in his eyes. Anger, yes, but also something else. Understanding, maybe. Or the beginning of fear. "Your first test starts now," she continued, pulling out her phone. "There's a shipment coming in tonight at the harbor. Third-party importers trying to cut into our territory. They've been warned twice. They didn't listen. I want you to handle it." "Handle it how?" Jin asked warily. "However you see fit, but they need to understand that our borders aren't negotiable." She met his gaze directly. "Show me what the Viper is capable of. Impress me, and maybe your accommodations improve. Maybe I start treating you like something more than the piece of trash who grabbed me in that restaurant. Disappoint me." She let the threat hang unfinished, watching him process. Jin's eyes narrowed. "You're testing my loyalty." "I'm testing everything about you," Zara replied. "Loyalty, skill, judgment, intelligence, ruthlessness when necessary, restraint when prudent. You have 2 hours to plan and execute. My guards will accompany you, but the strategy is entirely yours. Succeed, and you earn a small measure of my respect. Fail, and your father gets his wish," Jin finished quietly. "Exactly." She smiled coldly. "So I suggest you don't fail." Zara watched the operation unfold from the surveillance room, multiple camera feeds showing different angles of the harbor. Jin stood in the center of his temporary team, 4 of her best men, all skeptical of this arrangement, all watching him for signs of betrayal. To her surprise, Jin took command with immediate authority. "Positions here, here, and here," he instructed, marking a tablet with tactical precision. "They'll expect a frontal assault or a standard intimidation play. We'll give them something completely different." "What's the play?" one of her guards asked skeptically. Jin's smile was sharp as a blade, and for a moment, Zara saw why they called him the Viper. "Psychological warfare. We're going to make them destroy themselves." Zara leaned forward, intrigued despite herself. 20 minutes later, she understood his brilliance. Instead of a violent confrontation, Jin had orchestrated a systematic dismantling of the third-party operation from the inside. He'd somehow researched their leader during the 2-hour window, found his weak points, and exploited them with surgical precision. A few well-placed photos sent to the right phones. Some fabricated evidence of betrayal planted in strategic locations. A phone call at just the right moment with just the right information. By the time Jin's team actually arrived at the warehouse, the third-party crew was already tearing itself apart from paranoia and suspicion. "Impressive," Zara murmured, watching Jin walk through the chaos with calm confidence, speaking to the operation's shattered leader in tones too quiet for their microphones to catch. 5 minutes later, the third-party crew was packing up and leaving, not because they'd been beaten, but because they'd been convinced it was in their best interest to never return. 0 casualties, 0 evidence, maximum effectiveness. Her phone buzzed with a message from Jin. "Mission accomplished. Zero complications, awaiting your assessment. Zara smiled despite herself and replied, "Return to base, we'll discuss your performance." When Jin returned to the estate 2 hours later, Zara was waiting in the training room. He stopped in the doorway, surprise crossing his features when he found her there in workout gear, hands wrapped for sparring. "Your quarters have been upgraded," she said without preamble. "You've earned slightly better accommodations. But there's one more test tonight." "What test?" Jin asked warily. She gestured to the sparring mat between them. "Me. If you're going to be my bodyguard, I need to know you can actually protect me. And more importantly," she stepped onto the mat, falling into a fighting stance, "I need to know you're not going to fold the first time someone throws a real punch." Jin's eyes widened slightly. Then slowly, something like respect crossed his face. "You want to spar with me? I want to see if the Viper has any bite left, or if you're all reputation and no substance." A genuine smile crossed his face, not the cruel smirk from the restaurant, but something real, almost appreciative. "You're full of surprises, Miss Park," he said, stepping onto the mat and mirroring her stance. "You have no idea, Mr. Wang. And for the record," she circled him slowly, "I won't go easy on you." "Good," Jin replied, his eyes tracking her movements with the focus of a trained fighter. "Neither will I." They circled each other, and Zara saw the exact moment Jin recalculated his entire understanding of her. Not just the Mafia princess, not just the woman he disrespected, but a legitimate fighter, a real threat. He moved first, a testing jab that she deflected with practiced ease. She countered with a low kick that he barely blocked, and she saw surprise flicker across his face at her speed. They exchanged a rapid series of strikes, each gauging the other's skill level. Jin was good, military training probably, combined with years of street fighting experience. Fast, technical, powerful. But Zara had been trained by the best bodyguards in Korea since she was 6 years old. Her mother had insisted on it, saying that a woman in their world needed to be twice as dangerous to earn half the respect. She feinted left, then swept his legs with a move he never saw coming. Jin hit the mat hard, genuine shock flashing across his face as the air left his lungs. "Lesson 1, Zara said, standing over him with satisfaction warming her chest. "Never underestimate someone based on their appearance. Not their gender, not their size, not anything. I made that mistake with you at the restaurant." He stared up at her, chest heaving, something unreadable shifting in his eyes. "What mistake?" "I thought you were just another entitled criminal. Cruel because you could be, because no one had ever made you face consequences." She offered him her hand, a gesture of respect. "But tonight, I saw real strategy, intelligence, restraint when violence would have been easier. Maybe there's more to you than I thought." Jin stared at her extended hand for a long moment, as if trying to determine if this was another test, another trap. Then, slowly, he reached up and took it. The moment their hands connected, something shifted in the air between them. An acknowledgement. The beginning of something neither of them had expected. "Same," he said as she pulled him to his feet, his grip firm but respectful. "I thought you were just another spoiled princess playing at power. I was wrong about a lot of things." "Yes," Zara agreed, stepping back to restore professional distance. "You were." But as she walked toward the door, she couldn't shake the strange feeling in her chest. The sense that the game had just changed in ways she hadn't anticipated. "Miss Park?" Jin called after her. She paused, looking back. "Yes? Thank you," he said quietly. "For not killing me. For this, whatever this is. I know I don't deserve it." Zara studied him for a moment. This man who degraded her, who was now her prisoner, who'd just shown her glimpses of someone completely different than the monster from the restaurant. "You're right," she said finally. "You don't deserve it. Not yet, but maybe." She paused, then added, "Maybe you will, if you keep surprising me." Then she left, closing the door behind her and leaning against it for just a moment, her heart beating faster than it should. This was supposed to be simple: punishment, justice, a lesson in humility. So why did it suddenly feel like something much more complicated? 3 weeks passed in a strange, unexpected rhythm. Jin accompanied Zara everywhere: business meetings, territory inspections, family dinners with her father's inner circle. He stood silent and watchful at her shoulder, a constant presence that somehow shifted from oppressive to comfortable. He was good at his job. Exceptional, actually. Twice he'd identified security threats before her regular guards noticed. Once, he talked down a volatile situation with a rival family that could have turned into a bloodbath. And he never, not once, touched her inappropriately. More than that, he'd stopped touching her at all, unless absolutely necessary, maintaining a respectful distance that felt like its own kind of apology. "You're different now," Zara observed one evening. They were in her office at the estate, reviewing financial reports for their casino operations. Jin sat across from her, studying spreadsheets with the same intensity he'd once reserved for intimidation. He looked up, his expression guarded but no longer hostile. Different how? Careful, respectful, thoughtful. She set down her pen, genuinely curious. Why the change? And don't say it's just because I have power over you. I've seen men in worse situations who never learn. Jin leaned back in his chair, studying her with those dark eyes that had become somehow less cold over the weeks. Less calculating, more human. "I've had time to think," he said finally, "about who I was becoming, what I was doing to people, the man I saw in the mirror, and I didn't like what I saw." He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of vulnerability she'd never seen from him before. "My father built his empire on fear and violence. When he died, everyone expected me to be the same. So I was, worse even. I thought that's what strength looked like." "The Viper," Zara said softly. "The Viper." He smiled without humor. "I thought power meant making people afraid, making them feel small and helpless, proving I was untouchable." He paused, his gaze holding hers. "Turns out, real power is making someone like me realize how small they actually are, how much they have to learn." Something in Zara's chest tightened, an unexpected emotion she wasn't quite ready to name. "Your 6 months are half over," she said, changing the subject before she could examine that feeling too closely. "You've exceeded expectations significantly. My father even commented on your performance last week. That's rare. So I get to live?" Jin asked, and there was something almost playful in his tone now, a lightness that hadn't existed before. "You get to live." Zara hesitated, then made a decision. "And when your term ends, there might be a place for you in my organization, a real position, if you want it." Jin's eyes widened with genuine surprise. "You're offering me a permanent position? After everything? I'm saying you've proven yourself valuable. And?" She paused, choosing her words carefully. "I think we work well together. Your strategic mind complements my operational knowledge. You see angles I miss. I catch details you overlook. It's effective." "Zara?" He said her first name, something he'd never done before, testing it like he was learning a new language. "Can I ask you something?" "You just did," she replied, a small smile tugging at her lips. He smiled back, a real smile this time, reaching his eyes and transforming his entire face. "Fair point. Can I ask you something else?" "Depends on the question." Jin's expression turned serious, vulnerable in a way that made her pulse quicken. "Why did you really spare me?" The truth, not the lesson about respect and consequences. Zara could have deflected, should have, maintained professional distance and the power dynamic that kept everything simple and controlled. But something about the way he looked at her, genuinely curious, openly hopeful, completely honest, made her want to answer truthfully. "Because I saw something in you that night at the summit," she admitted quietly. "Under all the fear and anger and humiliation, I saw someone who could be more than what he'd become. Someone capable of growth, of change, of becoming better." She paused, then added, "And I wanted to see if I was right, if the person I glimpsed was real or just wishful thinking." "Were you?" Jin asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Right?" Their eyes locked across the desk. The air between them felt suddenly charged, heavy with something unspoken and dangerous. "I think so," Zara whispered back. Jin stood slowly, moving around the desk with careful, deliberate movements. Not threatening, just closing the distance. He stopped a respectful foot away, but she could feel the heat of him, smell the subtle scent of his cologne, mixed with something uniquely him. "I need to tell you something," he said, his voice low and intense. "What?" Zara's heart was hammering now, though she kept her expression calm. "That night at the restaurant? When I touched you?" His jaw clenched, pain evident in every line of his face. "I've replayed it 1,000 times in my head, 10,000 times, and every single time I hate myself more. Not because you turned out to be powerful, but because no one deserves to be treated that way, ever, regardless of who they are or what position they hold. Jin, Zara started, but he held up a hand. Please, let me finish. He took a shaky breath. You could have killed me, tortured me, made me disappear like I never existed. But instead, you gave me a chance to be better, to become someone I can actually respect when I look in the mirror. Someone my younger brother might actually be proud of one day. So thank you for seeing something in me that I couldn't see in myself. The sincerity in his voice, the raw emotion in his eyes, broke something loose in Zara's chest. Something she'd been carefully keeping locked away. Without thinking, she reached out and touched his arm, the first time she'd initiated physical contact with him beyond sparring. Jin inhaled sharply, his eyes dropping to where her hand rested on his forearm, like he couldn't quite believe it was happening. Zara? He said, her name rough on his tongue. I need to be honest about something else. Something that's been driving me crazy for weeks. What? She asked, though part of her already knew. Could feel it in the electricity between them, in the way his eyes followed her movements, in the careful distance he maintained, like he was afraid of what might happen if he got too close. These past 3 weeks, being near you every day, learning from you, watching you command a room, he met her eyes, and the intensity there stole her breath. It's becoming very, very difficult to maintain professional distance, to remember my place. Zara's heart was racing now, her skin suddenly too warm. Jin, I'm not asking for anything, he interrupted quickly, desperately. I know I have no right. Not after how I treated you. Not after what I did. I just needed you to know. Needed you to understand that you're not just my boss or my warden anymore. You're... What? Zara whispered, unable to stop herself from asking, even though she knew this was dangerous territory. Jin's hand came up slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull away, to stop this before it went too far. His fingers brushed her cheek with devastating gentleness. Nothing like that night in the restaurant. This touch was reverent, asking permission with every millimeter. Everything I didn't know I needed, he said softly. Everything I don't deserve but can't stop wanting anyway. The confession hung between them, dangerous and intoxicating and absolutely forbidden. Every logical part of Zara's brain screamed warnings. He was supposed to be her subordinate, her prisoner, a man paying penance for his sins. But logic had nothing to do with the way her pulse raced when he looked at her like that. Nothing to do with the warmth spreading through her chest. Nothing to do with the way she found herself leaning into his touch instead of pulling away. This is complicated, she managed, her voice barely steady. I know, Jin said. My father would kill you if he knew. I know. We can't. This isn't. I know. Jin's thumb brushed across her cheekbone, the touch achingly gentle. I'm not asking for anything, Zara. I swear. I just needed you to know the truth, about how I feel, about what you've become to me. He started to step back, to restore that professional distance, but Zara's hand shot out and caught his wrist, holding him there, keeping him close. What if? She started, then stopped, unable to believe she was about to say this. What if I feel the same way? Jin froze completely. What? I said. Zara took a breath, forcing herself to be brave. What if somewhere along the way, this stopped being just punishment? What if I started seeing you differently too? Jin's eyes searched hers, desperate and hopeful and terrified all at once. Zara, don't say that unless you mean it. Don't give me hope if... I mean it, she whispered. I don't know when it happened. Maybe during one of our strategy sessions when you made me laugh. Maybe when you protected those civilians during the warehouse incident when you could have just eliminated them as witnesses. Maybe. She paused, her hand still wrapped around his wrist. Maybe it's been happening slowly this whole time and I was too stubborn to admit it. This is insane, Jin breathed, but he didn't pull away. We shouldn't, your father. I know, Zara said. Trust me, I know all the reasons this is a terrible idea. But, he prompted, leaning closer, his free hand coming up to cup her face. But I'm tired of pretending I don't feel this, whatever this is. The space between them had shrunk to inches. Zara could feel his breath on her lips, could see the conflict warring in his eyes. Desire and respect, want and restraint. Tell me to stop, Jin whispered, his forehead nearly touching hers. Tell me this is still just about my punishment, and I'll step back. I'll never mention this again. But Zara, if you don't tell me to stop right now. Instead of answering, Zara closed the distance. The kiss was electric, a collision of everything they'd been holding back for weeks. Jin's arms came around her instantly, pulling her closer as if he'd been starving for this. One hand tangled in her braids, while the other pressed against the small of her back. Zara kissed him back with equal intensity, her fingers fisting in his shirt, months of tension and denial pouring into this single moment. This was nothing like the cold, cruel man from the restaurant. This Jin was passionate but careful, intense but respectful, taking only what she offered and asking permission with every touch. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Jin rested his forehead against hers. "I'm in so much trouble," he murmured, a smile playing at his lips despite the gravity of what they'd just done. "We both are," Zara agreed, but she was smiling too. No one can know. Not yet, not until. "I know," Jin said. "We'll be careful, discreet. I won't give your father any reason to." A sharp knock at the door made them spring apart like teenagers caught by parents. "Miss Park?" came the voice of her head of security. "Your father requests your presence in the main hall. Urgent matter." Zara's eyes met Jin's, and she saw her own concern reflected there. Urgent matters in their world were rarely good news. "I'll be right there," she called, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Then, quieter to Jin, "We'll finish this conversation later. For now, back to professional distance. Can you do that?" Jin straightened, and she watched him transform before her eyes, the vulnerability tucking away, the careful mask of the professional bodyguard sliding into place, but his eyes remained warm when they met hers. "I can do whatever you need me to do," he said. "That's why I'm here." The main hall was tense when Zara arrived, Jin following 2 steps behind her in his role as bodyguard. Her father stood at the head of a long table, surrounded by his most trusted advisors. All of them looked grim. "Appa?" Zara said, immediately switching to business mode. Quan Park's expression was darker than she'd seen in months. "We have a problem. Multiple problems, actually. Sit." Zara took her place at his right hand, Jin positioning himself behind her chair like a shadow. She felt hyper-aware of his presence now, of the warmth radiating from him, of what had just happened between them minutes ago. "Focus," she commanded herself. "3 of our warehouses were hit tonight," her father began, sliding photographs across the table. Simultaneously, professional work. They knew exactly where to strike and when. Zara's blood went cold as she studied the images. The precision of the attacks, the timing. This wasn't random. "The mole," she said. "The mole," her father confirmed. "Who's been feeding our enemies information for months, and I believe I've finally identified him." He slid another photograph across the table, and Zara's stomach dropped. Park Dae-jung, her uncle, her father's younger brother. "No," she breathed. "Uncle Dae? That's impossible. He's been loyal for 20 years, her father finished grimly, which made him the perfect cover. "No one would suspect him, as I barely suspected him myself until tonight." He pulled out more evidence, bank records, phone logs, surveillance photos. "He's been working with the Song family for 6 months, planning a coup. They want to eliminate me, install him as the head of the Park Empire, and merge our territories with theirs." Zara's mind raced, processing the implications. When? Tomorrow night, during the charity gala at the Grand Hyatt. Maximum visibility, maximum chaos. Her father's jaw clenched. They're planning to make it look like the Lee family was responsible. Start a war that will tear Seoul apart while they consolidate power. "We shut it down," Zara said immediately, her strategic mind already working through scenarios. "Alert security, cancel the gala, bring Uncle Dae in for." "No," her father interrupted. "If we do that, they'll know we're onto them. They'll scatter, regroup, try again when we're less prepared. We need to let it play out." "You want to use yourself as bait?" Zara's voice rose despite her attempt to stay calm. "Appa, that's the only way to catch all of them at once," he said firmly, "to end this threat permanently." His eyes softened slightly. "Which is why you won't be there." "What?" "No. Absolutely not. If you think I'm going to..." "You're the heir," Quan Park said, his tone brooking no argument. "If something goes wrong tomorrow night, the Park Empire needs to survive. That means you need to survive. You'll be at the safe house in Busan with a full security detail. I'm not running while you walk into a trap." Zara stood, her hands flat on the table. We do this together or not at all. Zara, no, Appa. You taught me to never abandon family. You taught me that we stand together. I'm not breaking that rule now. Father and daughter stared at each other, wills colliding. Finally, Quan Park sighed. You're too much like your mother, he said, but there was pride in his voice. Fine, but you stay in a secure location during the event. You coordinate from the command center, not the floor. Deal, Zara agreed. And your bodyguard stays with you at all times. Her father's eyes shifted to Jin, who'd remained perfectly still throughout the entire exchange. Mr. Wong, I trust you understand the responsibility I'm placing on you. Jin bowed deeply. I would die before I let anything happen to your daughter, Mr. Park. See that it doesn't come to that? And her father replied, We've lost enough people already. The next 24 hours passed in a blur of preparation. Zara and Jin worked alongside her father's security team, coordinating defense strategies, identifying potential threats, preparing for every possible scenario. They maintained professional distance in front of others, but Zara felt the weight of Jin's gaze whenever they were in the same room. Felt the electricity every time they had to coordinate plans, their hands brushing over maps and tablets. The night of the gala, Zara positioned herself in the command center on the hotel's third floor, a renovated conference room filled with monitors showing every angle of the event below. Jin stood beside her, both of them wearing tactical gear concealed under formal attire. All teams in position, came the voice through her earpiece. Guests arriving now. On the monitors, Zara watched Seoul's elite file into the grand ballroom. Politicians, business leaders, and carefully selected members of various crime families, all dressed in designer evening wear, all playing the game of civilized society while violence lurked beneath the surface. And there, in the center of it all, was her father. Distinguished in his tuxedo, playing the role of generous philanthropist while enemies circled like sharks. I don't like this, Jin murmured beside her. Too many variables, too many civilians. Neither do I, Zara admitted. But Appa's right. This is the only way to end it cleanly. She watched her uncle arrive. Uncle Day, who'd taught her to ride a bike, who'd brought her ice cream when her mother died, who was now planning to kill her father. The betrayal burned like acid in her chest. Target acquired, one of her security team reported. Park Dae-jung is moving toward the East Corridor, 3 Song family members with him. Stay on them, Zara ordered, but maintain distance. We need to catch them in the act. Minutes ticked by like hours. Zara's hands were clenched so tight, her nails drew blood from her palms. Jin noticed and gently pried one hand open, his thumb brushing across her wrist in a gesture of comfort that no one else could see. It's going to be okay, he whispered. Your father knows what he's doing. Weapons detected, came an urgent voice through the comm. West entrance. 4 armed individuals entering through the service corridor. That's not the plan, Zara said, alarm spiking through her. That's not where Uncle Day. It's a diversion, Jin said sharply. They split their forces. Keep some of your security on your uncle, but we need to. The lights went out. Emergency lighting kicked in immediately, bathing everything in an eerie red glow. On the monitors, Zara watched chaos erupt in the ballroom below, screaming guests, security teams mobilizing, and in the center of it all, her father surrounded by enemies. Appa? Zara started toward the door, but Jin caught her arm. Wait, something's wrong. This is too coordinated, too. The door to the command center exploded inward. 4 armed men poured through, weapons raised. Jin moved like lightning, positioning himself between Zara and the threat even as his own gun cleared its holster. Get down, he shouted, returning fire. But there were too many of them, coming from too many angles. Zara drew her own weapon, taking down 1 attacker while Jin handled 2 more. But the 4th, pain exploded across her temple as something struck her from behind. The world tilted, blurred. She heard Jin roar her name, saw him fighting toward her through a haze of motion and violence. Then strong arms caught her as she fell. Not Jin's arms. Hello, niece, Uncle Day's voice said in her ear, cold and triumphant. Did you really think we didn't know about your little command center? Your father taught me everything he knows, including how to plan for contingencies. Let her go. Jin's voice, raw with fury and fear. Zara's vision cleared enough to see Jin on his knees, 3 guns pointed at his head. Blood streamed from a cut above his eye, and his hands were raised in surrender. Not for himself, she realized with a jolt of emotion, but for her. The famous Jin Huang, Uncle Day said mockingly. The viper, reduced to a lapdog. How disappointing. My brother always did have a gift for breaking dangerous men. Touch her again and I'll kill you, Jin growled. I don't care how many guns you have pointed at me. How romantic, her uncle laughed. Don't worry, she won't be hurt. She's far too valuable. With Zara as my prisoner, Quan will do exactly what I tell him, including signing over everything he's built before I put a bullet in his head. You won't get away with this, Zara managed, though her head was pounding and blood trickled down her face. He'll destroy you. He'll try, Uncle Day agreed, but he'll fail. Because if he doesn't surrender completely, I'll kill you right in front of him, and that will destroy him far more effectively than any bullet. He signaled to his men, and rough hands grabbed Zara, zip-tying her wrists behind her back. Take Huang too, her uncle ordered. He might be useful leverage, or entertainment. We'll decide later. No. Zara struggled against her captors. Let him go. This is between family. He has nothing to do with. He has everything to do with it, her uncle cut her off. I've been watching you two. The way you look at each other when you think no one's paying attention. The way he'd die for you without hesitation. He smiled cruelly. That kind of devotion is rare and exploitable. Jin's eyes met Zara's across the room, and she saw fury there, and fear, and something that looked heartbreakingly like love. Whatever you're planning, don't. She tried to tell him with her eyes. Don't do anything stupid. Don't sacrifice yourself for. But it was too late. Jin was already moving. He exploded upward with brutal efficiency, disarming the man closest to him and using the stolen weapon to take down two others. He moved with the lethal grace that had earned him his nickname, every strike precise and devastating. For a moment, Zara thought he might actually succeed, might somehow turn the tide of this disaster through sheer will and skill. Then the gunshot cracked through the air. Jin staggered, his hand going to his left shoulder where crimson bloomed across his white shirt. But he didn't stop fighting. He took down another attacker, even as blood poured from the wound, his eyes never leaving Zara's face. Enough, Uncle Day roared. Shoot him again and I'll... You'll what? Jin snarled, still fighting despite the blood loss. You need me alive for leverage, remember? So either kill me or get out of my way because I'm not letting you take her. Another gunshot. This time, Jin's leg buckled. Jin! Zara screamed, fighting against the hands holding her with desperate strength. He hit the ground hard, but tried to push himself up, tried to keep fighting even as his body failed him. Blood pooled beneath him, spreading across the floor in a dark stain. Stop! Zara shouted at her uncle, tears streaming down her face. Stop, please. I'll cooperate. I'll do whatever you want. Just don't hurt him anymore. Uncle Day smiled. Now we're getting somewhere. Take them both and get medical attention for Huang. We need him breathing, at least for now. As rough hands dragged her toward the door, Zara kept her eyes on Jin. He was still conscious, barely, his hand reaching toward her even as they pulled him away. I'm sorry, she mouthed to him. I'm so sorry. They were taken to a warehouse on the outskirts of Seoul, one of her uncle's properties that had been converted into a makeshift prison. Jin was thrown into a cell adjacent to Zara's, a medic patching his wounds with the minimum care necessary to keep him alive. Zara watched through the bars separating them as they worked on him, her heart breaking at every grimace of pain that crossed his face. This is my fault, she said when they were finally alone, her voice raw. If we hadn't. Don't, Jin interrupted, his voice weak but firm. He'd been propped against the wall of his cell, makeshift bandages covering his shoulder and leg. Don't you dare blame yourself for this. You got shot protecting me, multiple times. You could die because of me, because I couldn't just keep this professional. Zara. Jin's eyes locked onto hers with startling intensity despite his injuries. I would take 100 bullets for you, 1,000, and not because I have to, because I want to, because you're worth dying for. Don't say that, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. Please don't say that. Why not? It's true. He tried to smile, though it was more of a grimace. Kind of ironic, isn't it? I touched you that night at the restaurant like you were nothing. Now I'd give everything I have just to make sure you're safe. funny how the universe works. This isn't funny, Zara choked out. You're bleeding? You might die. My father might die. Everything is falling apart, and I can't fix it. Hey, Jin's voice softened. Look at me. She did, meeting his gaze through the bars separating them. We're going to get out of this, he said with absolute conviction. Your father is the most dangerous man in Seoul. He's not going down without a fight, and neither are we. How? Zara asked desperately. We're locked in cells. You can barely move. My uncle has guards everywhere. How are we possibly going to? A sound from above cut her off. Footsteps on the roof. Multiple sets, moving with tactical precision. Jin's eyes widened. Then he smiled. A real, genuine smile despite everything. Because your father didn't become the most powerful man in Korea by being predictable. The skylight exploded inward in a shower of glass and steel. Repelling lines dropped through the opening, and 6 heavily armed figures descended into the warehouse with military precision. Gunfire erupted immediately, her uncle's guards returning fire, but they'd been caught completely off guard. The assault team moved with lethal efficiency, each shot precise and devastating. Within 90 seconds, every guard in the warehouse was down. The lead operative removed his mask, and Zara's heart nearly burst with relief. Appa! Kwon Park looked furious and magnificent, his tuxedo jacket traded for tactical gear, his eyes blazing with protective rage as he surveyed his daughter locked in a cell. Get them out, he ordered his team. Now. Someone produced bolt cutters, and within seconds, Zara was free. She stumbled out of the cell and straight into her father's arms, sobbing with relief. I've got you, he murmured, holding her tight. You're safe now? I've got you. Jin, Zara managed, pulling back. He's hurt. He took bullets for me. Her father's expression softened slightly as he looked at the young man being carefully extracted from his cell. Jin tried to stand on his own but swayed dangerously, and 2 of Kwon Park's men had to support him. Get him to the medical team, her father ordered. Then, surprising everyone, he approached Jin directly. You protected my daughter. Jin met his eyes despite the pain etched across his face. I would do it again, sir, without hesitation. Kwon Park studied him for a long moment, and Zara held her breath, unsure what her father was thinking. I know, her father said finally. I've been watching you both for weeks. The way you look at each other, the way you've changed, how you've become someone worthy of respect. He paused. Someone worthy of her. Zara's eyes widened. Appa, you knew? I'm not blind, daughter, and neither are my security teams. He turned back to Jin. Your 6 months are over. Consider your debt paid. But I'm offering you something different now. Not as her prisoner, but as her equal, if you want it. I want it, Jin said immediately. More than anything. Good. Kwon Park gestured to his men. Get him proper medical attention. And Zara. He looked at his daughter with love and pride. We still have work to do. Your uncle is in the wind with what's left of his forces. This isn't over. Then let's finish it, Zara said, her voice steady despite everything. Together. The final confrontation happened 48 hours later. Zara's uncle had barricaded himself in a private estate in Gangnam, surrounded by the last of his loyalists and Song family reinforcements. Jin, against all medical advice, insisted on being there. His arm was in a sling, his leg heavily bandaged, but his eyes were clear and determined. You should be in a hospital, Zara told him as they prepared for the assault, checking his weapon despite his injuries. I should be at your side, Jin corrected. Where I belong, where I'm choosing to be. Zara looked at him, this man who'd started as her enemy, become her prisoner, and somehow transformed into something she couldn't quite define, but couldn't imagine living without. When this is over, she said quietly, so only he could hear, we need to talk. About what happens next. About us. Us, Jin repeated like he was savoring the word. I like the sound of that. Mr. Wang, Kwon Park's voice interrupted. You'll be with the secondary team? Zara, you're with me. But when the assault began, carefully coordinated chaos erupted. The Song family fought with desperate violence, knowing this was their last stand. Zara moved through the estate alongside her father's elite team, clearing rooms with practiced efficiency. She found her uncle in the estate's study, surrounded by documents he'd been burning, evidence of his treachery going up in flames. Zara, he said when he saw her, and had the audacity to smile. My brilliant niece, It didn't have to be like this, you know, if you just stayed out of the way. If I'd stayed out of the way, you would have killed my father, she cut him off coldly. The man who gave you everything, who trusted you with his life. He gave me scraps, Uncle Day spat, all pretense of civility dropping away. I was always the younger brother, always in his shadow. Well, not anymore. He moved with surprising speed, drawing a weapon and aiming it at her heart. But Jin was faster. He appeared in the doorway like an avenging angel, his weapon already raised despite his injuries. The shot was perfect, disarming Uncle Day without killing him, sending the gun skittering across the floor. That's for touching her, Jin said coldly, for threatening her, for making her cry. Zara's father appeared behind Jin, his own weapon trained on his brother. For a moment, pain flashed across Kwon Park's face, the agony of family betrayal cutting deeper than any physical wound. Why, Day? He asked quietly. After everything we've been through together, why? Because I was tired of being second, Uncle Day said bitterly. Tired of watching you have everything while I got nothing. You had my trust, Kwon Park replied, my brotherhood, my loyalty, and you threw it all away for power. He lowered his weapon slightly. I won't kill you. You're still my brother. But you're banished, exiled. If you ever set foot in Seoul again, if you ever threaten my family again, I won't be so merciful. You'll regret this, Uncle Day hissed as security guards moved in to restrain him. You'll regret not killing me when you had the chance. Perhaps, her father said. But I'll sleep better knowing I'm not the kind of man who kills his own blood, even when he deserves it. As they led Uncle Day away, Zara felt Jin's hand slip into hers, a gesture of support and solidarity that her father noted with a small, knowing smile. 2 weeks later, Zara stood on the balcony of the Lotus Garden estate, watching the sunset over Seoul. The city glittered below like scattered jewels, beautiful and dangerous and home, arms wrapped around her from behind, careful of the healing bruises on her ribs. You're supposed to be resting, Jin murmured against her ear. So are you, Zara pointed out, leaning back into his embrace. You were shot twice, remember? How could I forget? You remind me every time I try to do anything remotely physical. She turned in his arms, careful with both of their injuries. Speaking of physical, Zara Park, Jin said with mock severity. Are you propositioning your bodyguard? Former prisoner, she corrected. Current? What exactly are we now? Jin's expression softened, one hand coming up to cup her face with that devastating gentleness she'd come to crave. Whatever you want us to be. I meant what I said. I'm choosing to be here. Choosing you. Every day for as long as you'll have me. My father gave us his blessing, Zara said. Not that I was asking permission, but it's nice not to have to sneak around anymore. Very nice, Jin agreed, lowering his head until their lips were almost touching. Though I have to admit, the sneaking around had its appeal. We can still sneak around, Zara whispered against his mouth. Just for fun. I like how you think. They kissed as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. It wasn't like their first kiss, desperate and forbidden and charged with danger. This kiss was softer, a promise instead of a question, a beginning instead of an ending. When they pulled apart, Jin rested his forehead against hers. I need to tell you something. What? Zara asked, her hands linked behind his neck. That night at the restaurant, when I first touched you? He paused, his voice thick with emotion. I've spent every day since trying to become worthy of you, trying to be the man you saw when you looked at me and decided I was worth saving. I'm not sure I'll ever completely get there, but... Jin? Zara cut him off with another kiss, pouring everything she felt into it. When she pulled back, she said firmly, You already are. You proved it 100 times over. You took bullets for me. You changed everything about yourself. You became someone I'm proud to stand beside. Partners? Jin asked, a smile playing at his lips. In everything, Zara confirmed. Business, life, and whatever chaos comes next, because with our families, there's always chaos. I wouldn't have it any other way. They stood there as darkness fell, wrapped in each other's arms, while the city they protected and ruled in equal measure sparkled below them. Zara thought about that night at the Dragon's Pearl, about the man who'd grabbed her wrist with casual cruelty, about her rage and her plan for punishment. She never could have imagined it would lead here, to this moment, to this man who'd become her partner in every sense of the word. Sometimes, she thought, the best revenge isn't vengeance at all. Sometimes it's transformation, and sometimes, if you're very lucky, it's love. "What are you thinking about?" Jin asked, sensing her contemplative mood. "About how glad I am that you touched the wrong woman," Zara replied with a smile. Jin laughed, a genuine, joyful sound that she'd worked hard to earn. "Best mistake I ever made." "Worst mistake," she corrected. "That led to the best outcome." "I'll accept that." He pulled her closer, mindful of their healing wounds. "So what now? What's next for the heir to the Park Empire and her reformed criminal boyfriend?" "Boyfriend?" Zara raised an eyebrow. "Is that what we're calling it? What would you prefer?" She pretended to consider. "Partner. Equal. The man who proved himself worthy by becoming someone better than he was." "That works too," Jin said softly, "as long as I get to keep being those things. For you. With you. Always," Zara promised. And as they kissed again under the stars, both of them knew it was a promise they'd keep. Through whatever challenges came next, whatever dangers lurked in the shadows of their world, they'd face it together. Two people who'd started as enemy and victim, captor and prisoner, who'd somehow found their way to something real, something worth fighting for, something worth changing for. Love forged in fire and blood and hard-won respect, the best kind there is. If you loved Zara and Jin's story of power, redemption, and unexpected love, make sure you're subscribed to this channel. Hit that notification bell so you never miss another intense romance story. Drop a comment below telling me what you thought. Should I make more Mafia romance stories like this? What tropes do you want to see next? And remember, sometimes the person who challenges us the most is the one who changes us forever. Until next time, keep believing in second chances and the power of transformation.